Hey Max, just wanted to put this video quickly together to showcase what I've put together for you, and you can reuse this and share this with other people or re-record this or do whatever you want with it. So anyway, I've just put together a little file which I'll share with you. I'll export it as a file so you can import it into your own Figma instance. But what I've kind of set up is a little demo of kind of auto layout and components. So what are they, right? So auto layout is basically, it's a Figma feature that allows you to construct stable and scalable groups of components. And it's based on rules rather than manually moving things around in that little unit. You use rules of spacing and alignment and so on, so that it's almost much closer to how engineers would build components in a front-end web UI. So it gets designers closer to that level of thinking, and once you kind of get your head around that, it becomes very easy to kind of scale and adapt UIs based on this. So I'll show some examples of that. And then components, similarly, are kind of designed for this scalability kind of concept. And what they really are reusable units of design. So it allows you to very quickly make change to one master component, and then it will affect every instance where you're using that. So imagine you have a button, like you don't want to redesign a button a million times in the UI. You kind of design one button and use that wherever you want, and then if you make a change to that master, it will affect everything. So I've created this little, forgive the UI, it's pretty crap, but it's just something quickly that I put together, which is like a little to-do list application. And so you can see that there's like a section at the top with a header, and it's got a button, and it's got these items in there. But this is all built off of auto layout and components. So if I look up here, you'll see that we have a bunch of components. We have a button, we have a checkbox, we have this little project unit, I have a header, and I have a to-do list item. And those are the only things that I've created and then just duplicated versions of it here. Both in our components and in the main UI, we're using auto layout. So for example, if I go on this button, you can see that this button actually has just the text in there and this little icon. But I've initiated an auto layout. So right now this is basically saying, hey, this thing goes from left to right. There's a spacing of 8 pixels between them. And then if you click on here, you'll see that I've set these sort of spacing rules of like how the padding works. So let's say, for example, I wanted to switch this to a button that does this. I can just click this and it will change the orientation for me. Or if I wanted to, and you'll notice that because I'm using this component in this header and I'm using that over here, it's made this change. But let's say I go back and I wanted to increase the spacing to 16 pixels. You'll notice that the spacing here has been changed, and it will change everywhere else, right? You can see that same spacing here. I'm going to go back to 8 for now. Similarly, for this header, you're reusing this button. I have a piece of text which is just normal text, but the header itself is also an auto layout. So you can see that I've got padding of 24 pixels, which is giving this padding on the outside. So if I change that to like 8 pixels for whatever, it would make that tighter and different. So I'm going to go back. And then we have our to-do item here. Now this is actually built from a couple of pieces, right? So we have this central unit here, which is its own auto layout. So this is defining the space between this title and description, right? And we have a 2 pixel space, so we could increase that to 4 pixels if we wanted to. But then this icon here basically means auto layout. So you'll see that there's an auto layout of the 2 text items, and then there's another auto layout that is linking the checkbox and that text. So I can use that one to then define, actually, I want the space to be 36 pixels between these guys, and it will make it wider. And then the whole unit itself is an auto layout, and you can see that we have padding on the left and right, and there's also this unit here that says space in between. So what does that mean? That means that when you use this auto layout in another frame, let's say I make this frame bigger, okay, I'm gonna also make this thing space between. Hold on a minute. Why is this not working? Actually, let me just resize it. Okay. So let me select all of these guys. And rather than fixed width, I'm going to go fill container. So as you see now, this project thing's moved to the right. And that's because I've got this set to something called space between. If I made this packed, you'll notice that it follows the rules of how this was defined here. But I'm kind of defining the rules of like when things move in scale, how do they change? So let's go back to space in between. So now when I make this smaller UI, this should be, no, hang on. Sorry. Right. There you go. Alright, so you have to kind of adjust a few things to get it to sit well together. But now this is now scalable, so regardless of what size I make this or whether I want to make this an iPhone app or a web app or whatever, the UI will adapt with me. So let's go and make some quick changes to this to make this a little bit nicer. So let's say I actually want to put this into its own auto layout. So right now these are just two separate pieces, right? But to make this a little bit better, I'm going to select these two together, press Shift A, or I can press this plus button, and that will put these into an auto layout. So if imagine I wanted to put more space between the header and this group of items, I can simply say, oh, let's put 24 pixels and it will increase space there, right? So now what I can then do is, because it's an auto layout, I can kind of move things around. So let's say let's do a couple of things. I'm gonna create another variant of this checkbox. So this is where the power of components will come into play. Let's say that I had a version of this where I actually wanted it to show like some kind of filled state, right? So I'm gonna just bring this in. Let's make this like that. Maybe we want to make this just 2 pixels, and I want to fill this, not have a stroke, and maybe I want to fill it with like a blue or something. Cool. And this one is, I'm going to group these two. So these are now two different variants, right? Sorry, two different components, master components. I can select these, combine these as a variant, so they're called checkbox. And I can define a different variant state. So this one could be unchecked. This one could be checked. I want to go up here and change this property to something like state or something. So now this thing is available to me. So if I wanted to come here, I can click on this checkbox, and you'll see here it says unchecked, and I can click on checked. And now I've got this state recorded somewhere. I could even name this as to record training. Okay. Do some stuff. Okay. And now because these items, which is this one here, are in auto layout, I can easily move these around like very quickly without thinking about the minutiae of the detail that I need to move around. So I can easily now start making changes to these components, and you'll see that they'll change here. So for example, let's say I feel like I actually wanted more space in between my items, like they're a bit too tight. And I also want to change some of the styling here. So I'm going to change the styling of this to not be black, but maybe more of a gray. That looks cool. Maybe I want to increase the padding on the top and bottom. So this is where auto layout and components come in together. So I can come up here and say, okay, rather than 8 pixels on the top and 8 pixels on the bottom, I want to make that like 12 pixels, 12 pixels. That's cool. Maybe I want a bit more. Maybe I want to make that 16, 16. All right. And you'll notice that the padding's changed. Now this is not working correctly. So let's fix this. Why is this not doing what I expect it to do? Packed. Yeah, there you go. That's what it should be. So maybe now that's too much, right? So let's go back to our 12. 12, 12. Cool, that's a bit better. Maybe what I want to do is let's create some like styles for this project, right? Maybe you have different colored projects or something like that. So we're going to go up here. We're going to duplicate a couple. Actually, I'll do it differently. I'll just do one. So let's detach this instance. I'm going to make this maybe like a different color. Let's say it's yellow. We'll make this a little component. I'll combine these as variants. So now we have like a project card or something, right? And maybe I actually wanted to make these actually card-like. So I'm gonna go and maybe make these have a fill. Maybe the fill will be some kind of... Actually, I'm gonna switch this up completely now that I'm doing this. I'm gonna make this black. I'm gonna make the text white. I'm going to start playing with auto layout on this. Okay, so I'm going to add some padding of like 4 pixels to this guy. Maybe that's too much. Maybe I want to do this manually. So I want to do 2 pixels here, 2 pixels here. That's cool. I'm going to put some rounding on this. Maybe I want to make this 6 pixels, 6 pixels. Okay, that's cool. I'm going to remove this one and I hit a plus to make another duplicate. So now I'm going to change the background of this guy to our yellow that we were looking at before. Oops. Maybe I want to add another one, so I'll duplicate this again. And maybe I want to make this red for whatever reason, right? Maybe this isn't project, or maybe it's status or priority or something like that. Okay, I can then define, so for example, let's call this status, project status, maybe that's what it is, right? So this can be default, this can be for whatever reason a warning, and this can be bad. I don't know, I'm just making stuff up right now. Now that I've got those here, you can see it instantly because I made the update to this unit, everything's changed here, and I can start tweaking these, right? So I can say, oh, actually, I want this one to be the state of warning. I want this one to be the state of bad. And then I can easily start duplicating some of these things. So maybe I want a couple of these red ones, right? So I'm going to duplicate them. I just hit Command D. I can then move these around. Maybe I want another one of these ones. I can move this one down over here. And you can easily start getting a sense of what's happening. Now, there are other plugins and tools that will allow you to very quickly update the text here, for example, and like have a variety of different text in there or whatever you want that to be. Maybe I want to change this color background here to be like a light blue. Would that work? It could do, but then this thing clashes. So maybe we don't want to do that. Right? Maybe we just want to tone this. I could do that. Something like that, right? And then I'm going to make this white. Cool. So now you see very quickly, like we've made changes to a few components here, and it's updated our entire little UI based on that. So there's a lot more to it. Obviously, I'm just kind of going through it very quickly, but this should give you an idea of how you can use auto layout to lay things out. You can get into much more advanced nested auto layouts to kind of do things really interestingly, as well as components. And you combine these two things together, you can very easily scale this to lots of different designs and frames. Cool. I hope that helps. Let me know if you have any other questions, or if you want to go in any more depth in any particular thing. Be happy to take you through it. Take care, buddy. Bye.